Okay, so today is the first board challenge review. Firstly, thank you for your participation this week. So everyone participated, which is fantastic. Please keep that up. And in fact, because you all did it quite early as well, we've put up a second board challenge and already 2 of you have had a go at that as well, at least at beginner. So that's fantastic. Just keep going the way you are, and that'll be great. People generally find it very useful, and it's something that they haven't practiced too much before, to actually look at code not written on the computer, to not rely on linters. Can I spot the typos? Can I spot the brackets? All things like that. And it's still a reasonably common technique used in interviews even today. I think we had one guy in last week to talk to the students, and he said approximately 15% of the interviews that he had a lot of interviews because he's very fussy about what role he wanted, but he essentially went for about 20 interviews over the course of a month or two, and he said about 15% of those interviews included a board challenge. So it's not that high, but it's still definitely used. And even if it's not a board challenge per se, you're gonna have to do some sort of code review, whether that be online or on a whiteboard, and explain that code, talk about that code, identify how you might improve it, identify any errors in that code, any syntax errors, etc. Right? So really useful exercise. We'll do them in both JavaScript and React, and past students have found them useful, so I hope you will do as well. These are your scores for the first week. People were asking, how do we score you, and all stuff like that, and maybe wanting a little bit of feedback. So I just thought I would share our basic spreadsheet for the scores, right? It's not very high tech, but it works. And essentially for the beginner challenge that you did, you got up to a maximum of 2 points for your explanation and how clearly you answered any additional questions that we posed. And there were 0.25 points for each typo identified as well. So the beginner challenge, we'll review it in a second, but it had 3 typos or elegance issues, a couple of semicolons, and 1 closing bracket, I think. So that was 0.75 if you got all of those. And then it was 2 for a correct answer. So those that got 2.75 was the maximum in this case. If you got 2.25, I think in Ewan's case, you just missed off the semicolons, right? Me and Ewan share that love of semicolons, and we missed them off quite a bit. So that was why Ewan dropped his score there. So really easy thing to fix. And likewise, right? There just might have been a slight gap in the explanation, or you missed a certain typo or something. If you've got any questions about the scores, please obviously let us know, and we can review them in some way just to double check that we haven't made a mistake. On the intermediate, the scoring is almost double weighted, so for each typo this time or elegance issue is 0.5 of a point, and for a correct explanation this time is 4 points. So in other words, that was a maximum of 5 because there were only 2 typos in the intermediate. So if you got 5, well done, that was all clearly explained. If you got a little bit lower, the explanation again might not have been as clear, or you just missed off a typo here and there. Cool. Any questions on that scoring on the board challenges themselves? Nope. And the workshop bonuses are just a cumulative score that we do throughout the week, right? So, we've said 1 point here, 2 point there for certain questions that we asked during the workshop. And that's just a sort of running tally of those points, All right. So that's the scoring. I have got some individualized feedback written on this sheet as well, but I won't share it now just in case people don't want me sharing things publicly on YouTube about their feedback. So I'll do that one-on-one with you at some point if you're interested. Cool. I'll close that now. I'm just going to double check Abdul's not here. I don't think he was here. There we go. We get to see me as well on YouTube. Lovely. I will... I'll leave that open, right? So essentially this was the board challenge. So onto the actual board challenges themselves. We'll very quickly review the actual solution, but essentially we're just going to use it as a template code to play around with the ideas that were introduced in the board challenge. So essentially this week it was all about strings and some methods that we could use to transform those strings into a different format. That was the general idea. nice introduction on your first week. So this is what we had, and just shout out the couple of things that we needed to change here. In fact, there wasn't even one of those semicolons, right? So that was one of the things we had to add a semicolon to the function invocation. The other two little typos, can you remember? Close in the curly brace, yeah? So one of those there. And the other one was... and the semicolon at the end of the return statement. Fantastic. Yep, so if I run that code now, it should run. And it says, welcome Peter. Right, exactly what we expected. The rest was for the explanation only. And the only really additional question that we asked on that was just checking that everyone was aware that we can write strings in multiple ways in JavaScript. Yeah, so we could use single quotes, we could use double quotes, which were equivalent. Can we mix quotes? Can we do a single and a double? Nope, definitely not. Can we use quotes within quotes? Could we do, let's say, if we did something like welcome and something like that. So what's that going to print? Yeah, so and retains its little inverted commas there. So that might be one easy way to do it. It's a little bit confusing though, to be honest. When I look at that line, I'm not truly happy with that. And also we could maybe do, if we used just single quotes, how would we make sure that and retains the single quote notation in front of it there, inside of a string? If we do is it a forward slash, so that sort of one? What's it saying? Yeah, I think it's a backslash, Ewan, yeah? So, very close, but the escape character is a backslash. And that is another way we could do it, yeah? So to escape certain characters in JavaScript, we can just use a backslash beforehand, just to say, please interpret this as the actual character rather than any special function that character has in JavaScript, yeah? But that's a little bit messy, right? So rather than using string literals like this, we can use something called template literals as well, right? We went through that at the beginning of the week. Ricardo went through it in the introduction to JavaScript. How do I write that again? A template literal? That's the backtick one, exactly, yep. Let's just have Peter, right? I'll get rid of Anne for now. No offense, Anne. Welcome, Peter, right? So we said anything that's a variable, we need a $sign. And then what? Yeah, curly braces, right? The variable goes inside the curly braces. Something like that. And again, if we run it, welcome, Peter, right? And then the only warning I had, didn't I, about template literals was perhaps if you were doing some sort of line break or weird indentation. Now if we run that, you see what gets returned? It's actually included the new line character and the tab. So just be aware of that if you're trying to display strings in a particular way, that it will literally include the layout exactly as you've got it on your page. Yeah, it starts up there, then we drop down a line and we have a tab. So it includes all of that inside of the template literal. Yeah. Any questions on that bit? Nope. So let's get to the real meat of the challenge, which is on the intermediate one. And we had something like that. So there were just two typos again. We had the same closing of the brackets and add in the semicolon. What's, oh yeah. Oh no, hold on. What have I done wrong there, guys? Error unexpected end of Nothing, right? It works. Yeah, okay. Don't know what that error is about. Let's just make this a bit easier to read. So we didn't give you the invocation. We were expecting you just to highlight that it hadn't been invoked and to write the invocation for us. I have included a second name in here just to make the example more interesting. So that was the rat-like guy from Harry Potter, wasn't it? Peter Pettigrew. So I've put him in there just to use the same first name. And I think the original question was actually like this, with a empty string there. But for a lot of people, I think we had the underscore character as well. But we'll come on to those differences in a second. What I really wanted to talk about was what the split, reverse, and join methods do, and just break them down a little bit by bit for our learning and our understanding. So the first thing I want to consider is the input and the output of each of the methods. So in other words, as an input, what do we, not arguments, I'm not talking about arguments, just what do we call the method on? So split can be called on what data type? A string, fantastic, yeah. If you can't remember that, if you get confused with split and string, I just use a bit of alliteration. So split works on strings, they both begin with S. And then what does split output? An array, yeah? So if I actually just took out reverse and join for now, what are we going to get? We've got our string as our input, that's our player. So we're calling essentially Peter Pettigrew.split, yeah? And we are using this argument here to do something, right? I won't say what exactly at the moment, but what do we think that is going to return? What data type first? We just said it. It's going to be an array, right? Yeah, fantastic. And yeah, we think we're going to have an array of how many elements? 2, agreed. And they are going to be the first one Peter and the second one Pettigrew. Yeah, just like that. Okay, so split, input string, output array. We'll look at some edge cases later, but for now, reverse. Input. Say again. Array, yeah. And outputs or returns. Pettigrew Peter, agreed, but as what data type? Array as well, yeah. So takes an array, outputs an array. Easy, but just reverses the elements within that array. And we had the case, didn't we, where there was just one element in the array as well. And in that case, of course, there's nothing to reverse. You know, put the first one to the last one, that's it. There's nothing else to do. So nothing actually changes. And then join. As an input, what can we call join on? Array. So it's an array method. And as an output, it outputs a string. Fantastic. So you'll often see at least split and join used together. If we've got an input as a string, we want to manipulate it in some way using some array methods in the middle, and then we want to put it back into a string again at the end. So that's quite a common pattern you'll see for transforming strings if the available string methods aren't suitable enough. Yeah, we can turn it into array instead. JavaScript is a dynamic language, a dynamically typed language, so we can easily have a variable that can be a string to begin with, and then that same variable can later on store an array or a function or whatever. Yeah, so we can easily transform our data types like that in JavaScript, as opposed to a strongly typed language such as Java. Okay, so that was the first sort of thing with inputs and outputs. Next, I wanted to consider arguments. How many arguments can each one take? Let's start at the top again. Split. How many arguments can split take? How many? 2. Okay, there's only one there. So what's the second one? So you've got here some sort of separator, right? Separator. Thank you, the non-English speaking people, or the native English people, tell me. Separate, like that. No, that's not right. Huh? I can't spell it right. Separate. What have I done?
Separate, so S-E-P-A-R-A-T-O-O-R. Yeah.
Lovely. That'll do. A separator in there. It's being put on under pressure on live coding. That's what I say. Separator. What's the second argument then? If you think it can take a second one. Limit. Yeah, nice. So it can actually receive a limit as well. We'll have a look in a second what that does. Actually, why not? Let's look now. I'll take those two out again just to simplify things. I don't know. Let's have 5 words. Peter Pettigrew is a rat, yeah? And our separator in this case, well, let's separate it into words. How would I separate this into words? An array of words. An empty string, like that. Ewan says, no, you need a space. We'll do it in both cases and see what happens. Let's leave it as a space for now. And the limit, let's say I just want the first 2 words again. I just want Peter and Pettigrew. I don't want what he is afterwards. What would I set my limit to? 2? Yeah, we think 2. Let's see what happens. Nice. Yeah? So that just gets the first 2 words. If we set it to 3, our limit, we of course get the first 3 words. So that's quite a useful extra argument that we can add to the split method. If instead we use a empty string like that, as originally suggested.
Just P and T return.
Yeah, so then Ewan's saying just P, E and T will be returned. I'll give you at least 1 bullet point for that, right? I haven't explicitly said it, but you've answered a couple good, so cheers for that. And then, yeah, it will break it down into each individual character, yeah, having an empty string. And of course, we just want 3 of those, because we've got a limit of 3. So it breaks it down, and he's a pet rat, so this is quite a good example. And then we just get the first 3 characters because we've limited it to 3. Nice. So don't forget that split can take up to 2 arguments. That limit can be useful in some cases. Any of those arguments actually required? What happens if we just do split with no separator? Do what? You don't know? So are they optional arguments or are they required? You think at least one's required, right? We saw the limit wasn't required because we didn't have that on the board challenge. But you think at least one's required? Or does it have a default set that we're not aware of? Let's have a look. Oh, still works. So the default is to split by a space. But in your code, I would suggest putting a separator because you might, like people in the room weren't sure of that. If we don't put a separator, what's it going to return? So just to be explicit in your code for the benefit of the people that you work with, just specify the separator, right? So if you want it in words, just put a string with a space inside. Yeah, it's not too much extra to ask, I don't think, and it doesn't really save you much time by omitting it, right? But it adds a lot to clarity and readability. So if we've got a space as a separator, 1 more board challenge point for this as well. And if, for example, let's leave all the words in there. And if, for example, for some reason, someone's a very fast but inaccurate typer, and for some reason they hit a double space, or maybe even like a triple space every now and then, is that going to affect the answer? Or are we still going to get Peter Pettigrew is a rat?
I think it will affect it. I think it will say.
Oh, hold on. I said the default. Yeah, going back. So I said that having it like that is the same as a word, right? But if we did it, do you see the difference?
Yeah, the default just.
Exactly. The default is effectively no splitter, yeah. So it just copies the string. So sorry, that was my error there, yeah. So yeah, feel free to interrupt me if I make silly mistakes like that, right? Yeah. So the default, if we don't put a separator in, then it doesn't separate the string at all, which makes sense, right? So if you need to separate it in any way and not just make a copy of a string, then please do that. Okay, but if I did try and separate it by words, and I had, for example, multiple spaces in there somewhere, is that going to affect the return value of my answer? Or will I still just nicely get Peter Pettigrew is a rat without any extra spaces or anything weird going on?
You get some empty strings within the.
Empty strings.
You just
Empty quotes.
if you put double space in that after split.
So what do we think we're going to get? Because I've done Peter 1, 2, 3 spaces. Everything else is one space apart from after is. So who wants to suggest exactly, be very, very picky, exactly what we're going to get in our array? Oops, sorry Richard, I spoke your name. Let's go with Anais first then. Yep, so Anais.
Three spaces between Peter and then two between is and a rat. Is that what you're saying?
So these are all strings, and then you think we're going to get Peter, and then you're going to get a space on its own.
You're going to get Peter and then three empty strings.
1, 2, 3 separate empty strings
Yeah.
with no spaces in between, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and then
Pettigrew.
Pettigrew, yeah.
The string Pettigrew is string for is.
String for is.
And then
There's 2 spaces after is.
yeah, so we get another.
Another 2,
Yeah.
and then rat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and let me just be really clear and make these strings. Cool. And I'll use that as a template because people are going to probably have fairly similar answers to that. Richard, what would you like to say instead?
I think you'll get Peter.
Yep.
And then you'll get one space. So
Well, as a string.
with a space, and then
Yeah.
you go. You skip those two ones. You get Pettigrew is, and then you get a space, and then you get space A. I think.
Space. Oh, I missed off. Yeah, we missed off the A, but I'm sure you meant to include that one, right? Anais? Yeah. So, sorry, is the A inside of the string?
Yeah.
Like that?
Yeah, like this.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else? Is that what you mean? So we've got Peter, comma, an empty string. Well, not an empty string. A string with a space inside of it. Then we got Pettigrew, is, space A, and then rat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. It's not an easy question, right?
I feel it won't affect.
Okay, so you just literally think it's going to be Peter Pettigrew is a rat. Exactly the same, just, yeah, no extra spaces in there or anything, Nilofa. Okay. Yeah.
I think.
Sorry, give me a second, Ewan.
Yeah, sure.
Peter Pettigrew is, a rat. Something like that. The commas don't particularly matter. Yep. Awesome. Ewan?
I think it will separate by the spaces. So
What does
similar to Richard's.
similar to Richard's one? So you think after Peter we're going to have,
There's 3 spaces after Peter.
so is that one string with 3 spaces inside, or
Yeah, that's right. No,
So you think more like that.
Yeah.
So that's, yeah, Peter, 3 spaces, Pettigrew is space, a space, rat.
Wherever the spaces are, it's separated individually by the space. So if it's 3 spaces, there'll be 3 spaces separated between Peter and Pettigrew, the same between Peter. You know what I mean? Okay. So yeah, Peter, space, Pettigrew, space, is space.
She think also after Pettigrew there's going to be a space like that, or not?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then is...
I think there's too many spaces before is Peter. So you have to get rid of one. Peter.
Okay, I'm confused, but if the answer comes up and it was what you were trying to explain, then we'll try and give you some points, but I'm a bit confused. I don't think you're spot on, so I don't think it matters in this case, but I will give you some points if I happen to be wrong.
There's too many spaces
Between Peter and Pettigrew?
Yeah, it should be just 3 spaces.
That's what I put, 3 strings with spaces inside.
And after is, Pettigrew is,
Yeah?
it should just be 2 spaces, because I think that's all you put in. Is it double spaces?
Okay. Whatever, let's try something like that, let's see what happens. Okay. Anyone else want to have a go, or just leave it? Yeah, if you want, Vincent, yeah.
So Peter, space,
So we've got Peter is 1 string, and then are the spaces inside the string or outside the string? Outside. So it's a separate string with 2 spaces inside. No? No space.
And then
Another empty string, right?
And then Pettigrew is so one space after is.
1 space after, so 1 empty string after
Yes,
is,
It was separated by spaces.
then a, and then rat. Yeah?
it is. Yes.
Okay.
That's probably
And you want that one as well, for it? Okay. Does that mean you're right though? Okay. Yeah, Abdul didn't tune in, so I just double check he's not there. Nope, he's not there. I'm going to shut that now then. Oh, where's it all gone? Yeah, I thought I lost it then. Whew. So, what will this separator do? Peter, then it should meet a string. So it should separate, right? Then the question is, what happens? Does it create an empty string? Does it create a string with a space? Does it put some spaces in front? Like that? Let's see. Let's find out. Was this the last one that everyone copied? I think it was, right? So well done to... have I named it correctly? No, I haven't. Right? We got you. Someone's called Pete. Well done, Vincent. First I called you Victor. Now I've called you Pete. So well done, Vincent and Porrick. Yeah. So essentially, what's happening is Peter. Then there's a space. Then there's another space, right? So it adds an empty string. Then there's another space, so it adds an empty string. Then there's a string with something inside of it, so it has that. There's a space, so that's separated it. There is the word. And then there's 1 additional space in here, so we need 1 additional empty string. And so forth, right? So, is it an issue if there are some extra spaces in your string? Yes and no, right? Yes, because you're going to get extra elements inside your array. Notice that even though it's an empty string, this now has 8 elements in it rather than 5. But the good thing is they're all the same. They're all empty strings. So you could perform an additional function to make sure there's no empty strings in your array and just remove them like that. So, there's a few ways around that of how we can deal with white space, but just be aware that it could happen, right, if people have used extra spaces. If there's been some typos in data entry, which can happen very easily. Anyway, that was just a bit of a silly question, really, but interesting to see what happens. Cool, so moving on, we've looked at the arguments for split. Oh, let me just make sure that Porik and Ewan, not Ewan, yeah, Ewan as well for the earlier ones, and then Pete, aka Victor, aka Vincent, also gets some points. Yeah. Right. Is it going to come back? Where are you? Wow, we changed a lot. There we go. Reverse. Does reverse take any arguments? Ever? No. So reverse doesn't take any arguments. And is it a mutator method? So if I did let new array equals, sorry for the boring example, 1, 2, 3, and I did new array dot reverse, and then return. Okay, let's do it like this. Let reversed equals new array dot reverse, yeah. And then I return reversed. What do we expect that function to return?
3, 2, 1.
An array of 3, 2, 1. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's have a look. 3, 2, 1. Fantastic. If instead we return new array, what will be returned? 1, 2, 3. Everyone agree? Yeah? Okay, let's have a look. Oh, 3, 2, 1.
It's hard to tell with some JavaScript methods.
It's very hard to tell. I agree. What's the mutator method? What isn't? It is quite hard to tell. But in this case, reversing new array, reverse doesn't create a copy of the array before it applies the reverse method. It just reverses that original array and therefore mutates it. Yeah. How do we learn these things? Probably just by repetition and memory, to be honest. Yeah. There is a nice article or organization, if you like, on MDM, and I'm probably not going to be able to find it now I've said this. I might have to find it for you afterwards, but there is some sort of guide somewhere that arranges the methods via whether they're accessor methods or mutator methods and stuff like that. So you can see at a glance which ones modify the array and which ones don't. So your classic ones like pop and push, they're going to modify the array. Quite a few of the more modern methods do not, in fact, modify that original array. So that can be more useful. We just create a copy beforehand. Yeah. Oh, I've got rid of my snippets. That's annoying. Apologies. Give me a couple of seconds. Didn't even mean to do that. Let's do that instead. Let's see if we can pull those back up. I don't think I saved them, but I think it was this one, right? How are we doing for time? Yeah, okay, so we'll wrap it up very, very shortly. So we've covered reverse pretty much. It's a mutated method, doesn't accept any arguments. And if now instead we look at join, we mentioned join takes an input of an array and returns a string, yeah? So this was our original question. Alright. Our separator was by words, yeah? So by a string with a space inside. Something like that. Is that working? Undefined, no return. Okay. I think we're there again. Yep. Oh, spoilers. So, if we just had a join like that with an empty string inside, how does that join things? Without space, right? Yeah, so annoyingly we've squashed the string altogether. There's not a lot of cases that we'd want to do that. So if you want it again spaced out, a space between each element, make sure you put a space between each element. If you wanted to write the string in kebab case, anyone know what kebab case is? No? Like that? Separated by a hyphen. So what sort of case do we use in JavaScript? Camel case, right? That one's not as easy to do with a join, to be fair, but you could easily do it. You could get the first letter of every additional word and change it to camel case. In fact, I think there's an exercise on the JavaScript training that asks you to do that, right? To transform a string into 3 separate cases. So kebab case is with a skewer in the middle or a hyphen in the middle. Yeah, that's why it's called kebab case or hyphen case. Snake case. What's snake case?
It's like the underscore.
That's the underscore one. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we want to join our words by an underscore. Then we could join it like that, like so. Well, can we write join like that again with no arguments? Yeah, so at the moment, without the join, we've got an array of 2 elements, yeah? Then if we invoke join with no arguments, Porik, you think it does what?
What you put in string quotations.
No, just with no arguments. So what does that do? Anyone else know? Anyone else know? Board challenge point for this one as well.
Question.
That function, what will it return? So I've put join without any arguments. Is that valid? Will that throw an error? So what's the default? Yeah, essentially for join. It's the last question of the workshop. I think you just tried it, right?
Yeah.
Ingenious, yeah, why not try it? So what does it do?
I got it right first time round. It returns just a singular string with all of it together.
Single string with all of it together? Is there any other characters in there?
So in this case,
Okay, I'm going to run it.
it'll just be Peter Pettigrew.
So it's Peter Pettigrew, but with a comma in between. Alright, so the default is, for each element in the array, unfortunately, it adds a comma in. Yeah, rat, comma, well that's reversed as well, yeah, rat, comma, a, comma, is, comma, Pettigrew, comma, Peter. Yeah, so if you want to avoid those annoying commas coming in your string, then of course you need to join it in some fashion, yeah, whatever you want, either all concatenated together or probably better, a space with the separate words. And of course we can put whatever we want in here, right? Exclamation marks, that will join it all with exclamation marks, whatever we want in there, yeah? Even things that would usually be used as operators, like, well, yeah, even that, right? Percentage sign, usually the modulus, but it's fine, it will just concatenate it into a string. Yeah, whatever we want to put in there. Yeah, 5 plus 6, it's not going to calculate it to be 11, it's actually going to put 5 plus 6 in between each string, yeah, like that. Anyway, we'll wrap it up there, unless there's any questions. Cool, I wanted to show you some UI training as well, but I will probably do that later now, because I've got another call that I need to take at 3 p.m, and we can just quickly run through the UI training at the end of the day, if that's alright with you. Yeah? What's that? That's a no, you must do it now. Okay, yeah, we'll do it soon. Alright, thanks guys.